On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, welcome to our 2020 primary election candidate forum, featuring candidates for State Legislative District 6, State Representative Position 2. I am Bev Austin, your moderator, and Mike Bell of the League is the timer. Election day for the 2020 primary is Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. This is a top two primary in which the two highest vote getters will advance to the general election in November. In this forum, the candidates will have an opportunity to present themselves to the citizens, and the citizens will have an opportunity to learn more about each candidate to help them make an informed decision when they mark their ballots. Before the questions begin, the candidates will have up to 30 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the voters why they are running. I will be asking the candidates questions that have been formulated by the League's Voter Services Committee. Candidates will be asked questions in alphabetical order, with the first speaker rotating with each question. Candidates have up to 90 seconds to answer each question, with additional time for rebuttal or a follow-up question as appropriate. Each candidate will have the opportunity for a 1-minute closing statement. I will ask as many questions as time allows. Our timer will signal when the speaker has 15 seconds remaining, and again when the time is up. Now, before we proceed, a reminder about voting in the primary. You must be registered in order to vote. You can register by mail or online by July 27th, 2020, up to 8 days prior to Election Day. You can register in person up to August 4th, 2020 at the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue, and at Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place, Spokane Valley, for same-day registration. These sites plan to be open with pandemic precautions in place and ask that you complete paperwork online before coming in. Registered voters will receive their mail-in ballots about 3 weeks prior to Election Day. Voters will not need to mark a party preference on this ballot. That was only for the March presidential primary. Ballots must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, August 4th, 2020. Ballots can be dropped off on Election Day at one of the voter service centers. For locations of ballot box or voter service centers, information about accessible voting units, or other questions about casting your ballot, contact the Spokane County Elections Office, 509-477-2320, or go to www.spokanecounty.org/elections. Contact information for the candidates as well as voter's guide can also be found on the website of the Spokane County Elections Office. Additional information about the candidates can be found on the League of Women Voters online voter guide, It's www.vote411.org. Now I will introduce the candidates for State Legislative District 6, State Representative Position 2. They are Jenny Graham, Republican, Tom McGary, Democrat. Also running is Christian McLaughlin, Democrat, who was unable to participate. Before we start the questions, each candidate will have up to 30 seconds to tell the voters why they are running. And we'll start with you, Jenny Graham. Would you tell us why you're running?
There we go, had to unmute. Thank you. Hey, thanks for inviting me today. The current climate of injustice for victims' rights is an open window into why I am running again for office. I successfully championed child sexual assault statutes of limitations law reform. The Green River serial murder case was also omnipresent in my life, as my sister, Debbie, and her friends were murdered in that case. The level of injustice during the case shaped my tenacity and drive to be assertive on the issues.
Thank you very much. Tom McGary, why are you running?
Thank you. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, and thank you, Jenny. It's nice to see you. I'm running because I believe that I have the background and the energy to take on the pressing issues of our time, including healthcare, housing, and the economy. I'm a Gonzaga Law School graduate and have spent most of my 30-year career working in housing law. I have the endorsements of at least 5 retired Superior Court judges. I'm a twice elected fire commissioner. Serious times call for serious people. I bring a multidimensional background, which I believe is essential to the people of the 6th Legislative District. Bev, you're on mute.
Thank you. Now we're going to get back to this. Oh dear. Okay, first question. And Tom, this is for you. What do you consider to be the most important responsibilities of a state legislator, and what specific training, experience, and skills do you have that have prepared you for this position?
Thank you, Bev. Obviously, the most important part of being a legislator, I think, is to listen to the people, to represent the will of the people, to put in the hard work, to listen, and to cast your ballot in the best interest of the people. I'm a great believer in working across the aisle. I think that the best results can be accomplished by people working together as opposed to adhering strictly to ideological bullet points. I think that the most important thing, of course, as we go forward is going to be the state budget. As we all know, we're going to be facing a $4.5 billion shortfall in the coming year. I think that the next biennium, the 21-22 biennium, isn't going to be a heck of a lot better. So I think that we need to listen to the people, and I think perhaps the most important thing, and I might say this more than once, is that I think we need to make sure that these inevitable budget cuts that's going to be a result of the response to the pandemic don't fall unfairly or disproportionately on the people of Eastern Washington, and specifically the 6th Legislative District. I think the most important thing that any legislator can do is very simply listen to the people and try to make the lives better for every single individual as possible. We represent everybody, not just left-leaning people or right-leaning people. We're the representatives of everyone.
Thank you very much. Jenny, what specific training, experience, and skills do you have that have prepared you for this position?
Thanks, Bev. Well, experience for one, I am a freshman legislator, and I have had the wonderful opportunity to have the people of the 6th District put their faith in me and their trust in me to go to Olympia after listening to them. I've actually taken the time in the past to go to their doors and to listen to their concerns, listen to business owners that have talked to me about worry that their doors were going to be closing and how they were going to possibly be able to continue employing the people that they had. So there are so many issues that we have faced. It's very fast paced, and you have a lot of individuals that you encounter in our district that may have differences of opinions. So I actually do have that experience to take the very, very tough and pressing issues of today and work across the aisles. I've done that on issues that and voted for things that I would have never in my wildest dreams thought I would. But it was simply the right thing to do. And I made the right decision based on the information that I've received from all of the people in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this next question, Jenny, we're going to start with you, and it is, what do you think the state role should be in addressing racial injustice, use of force by the police, and police oversight? What specific steps would you take or support to address these issues?
Okay, thanks, Bev. Racial injustice, this is a subject that I've dealt with extensively as a member of the Public Safety Committee. Racism does exist and is wrong in every situation. It is inexcusable. I've been fortunate to be in a position to fight it. I will continue to fight racism. In fact, I voted to remove second-degree robbery from the 3-strike sentencing. A sister and a mother of one of our constituents whose son was incarcerated came to me because their son and brother were in prison for life without the possibility of parole. Both agreed that he had committed egregious crimes, and I've looked at the record to confirm that. So they agreed that he should be in prison. But there was a feeling of unfairness that it was life without the possibility of parole. And as a mom, and as somebody that cares very much for fighting for justice, I would kind of lay in bed thinking about this issue because my sister was again, a murder victim. And what was crossing my mind is the man that murdered my sister was in life for prison without parole, and he murdered 50 plus people. This poor lady and his sister, he never murdered anybody. So I took the steps to stand up and do what was right, and I voted to eliminate the second-degree robbery from the 3 strikes.
Thank you very much. Tom, what do you think the state role should be in addressing racial injustice and use of force by the police and police oversight?
Well, yeah, certainly recent events have caused most of us, including myself, to take a much deeper look at myself and ourselves and to our entire system, the institutions that regard race relations. I've concluded that I need to commit myself to more lifetime learning. I'm not going to attack the police. Certainly, if somebody's breaking down my door at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want them to send in the canines, whatever needs to be done. But I think everyone recognizes that certain cultural norms regarding police conduct, they need to change. And I think they need to change sooner as opposed to later. I think a lot of police officers would agree with that. Some won't, but I think that's something that we need to really keep in mind. The systems in our county and our country fall well short when considering systemic and inherent racism. It's not always as egregiously obvious as in the killing of George Floyd. Most of the time, it seems to me that racial bias rears its ugly head when there's an event and compelling statements are made by leaders, but then a week later, a couple news cycles later, it's back to the basic business as usual practices. These are teachable times, and I think that these need to lead to actionable items. We all have to search our consciences and recognize that discrimination has happened and that's going to continue to happen. When it comes to racial justice, it's not enough to talk the talk. We absolutely have to take the time to educate ourselves and walk the walk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I think, Jenny, I'm going to start with you. And these next 2 questions, question 3 and question 4, are really a pair, and they have to do with budget. And you're still going to get 90 seconds for each part of it. So the first part has to do with spending cut recommendations. The second part has to do with new revenue sources or structural change. So Jenny, I'm going to read the question for you. Given the precipitous drop in state tax revenues due to the pandemic and increased expenses for safety net measures, what are your top 3 spending cut recommendations at the state level in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Okay, well, first of all, we've been asking for a special session to as soon as possible to be able to get in there and to address and look at how things have changed in the budget. I think that's something that is very important to mention, is that until we get some of that information, it's going to be difficult to talk about exactly, and hopefully, we may have to just move some things around and work very hard not to cut things. We need to take care of our economy, which is going to be key to prevent some of these very painful cuts that may come. And the best way to take care of that is to get Spokane and Washington working again to take care of our families. By overcommitting the state's budget surplus of $2.4 billion, the state is not equipped to handle impending economic downturn that keeps businesses closed or partially closed. Under the majority party's last proposal, spending will have increased by nearly 73% since 2013. Let me repeat that, 73%. The elderly people, disabled, and the poor are going to be the ones that are going to struggle with any new taxes that are coming up. So no new taxes, and we will work to get something within our budget.
Thank you very much. Tom, what would be your top 3 spending cut recommendations at the state level in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Well, I kind of agree with Jenny that it's kind of hard to see how that's going to look like right now. I think we all know there's going to be a special session sometime in August, so we can consider the spending cuts and perhaps any additional revenue sources. And I don't think anybody knows what it's going to look like. I think that what we have to do is make sure that these cuts do not disproportionately affect those of us in Eastern Washington. I think we do need to look at our most vulnerable populations, children, the elderly, sick, individuals who will be hurt most by budget cuts. I certainly believe in incentives for business, but I think that we need to make sure that we have clawback provisions in the event that if a certain corporation gets a tax incentives, that if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, that we can claw back the amount of taxes that they received. We've all done so much. We've all sacrificed. It would be just a shame to go forward and open up this economy too soon, too quickly. It would be devastating. I don't know if the economy of our country or if our state could deal with it. So I think what we need to do is listen to the experts, listen to our constituents, and make those decisions accordingly.
Thank you very much. Jenny, I'm going to give you 90 seconds to talk about any new revenue sources or structural changes to the taxing system that you would consider in order to maintain a balanced budget.
Okay. So let me see, am I on? Okay.
Yeah, you're on.
Sorry.
You're on.
So Washington State does not have a taxing problem. We have a spending problem. And that is evidenced by, again, the point that I made, a 73% tax increase since 2013. And the majority party has made it very clear that their goal is to institute a state income tax. Representative Chop has talked about a capital gains income tax. There have been so many other taxes in the last 2 sessions that have been instituted that it is it is unbelievable when you have elderly people that are calling and asking, what am I going to do to be able to stay in my home? And I am the representative in the 6th district that has fought against those taxes, because the bottom line is we have had billions of dollars in surpluses. There was no reason to raise the taxes. We provided a budget that would have not only paid for the necessary needs, we were also going to be able to give money back to the people in our district. And the majority party voted no on it. No more new taxes.
Tom, what do you have to say about the possibility of new revenue sources or structural changes to the taxing system in order to maintain a balanced budget?
Well, clearly the system we have right now of taxation is not a progressive tax system. I pay 8% on something I purchase, and I have a much higher income, and that elderly person in my district pays 8% on items that he or she purchases, even though her income may be just a tiny fraction of what I have. I'm not going to jump right in and say we need to have capital gains taxes, we need to have income taxes. I do agree that we have to be prudent in how we spend our money. I think we need to be very careful about how we give out tax breaks to those who are in the best position to pay our taxes. I don't believe that it's all going to be cuts. We do have to enhance some revenues. We do need to generate new revenue sources. I think the federal government, we're going to have to see what, if anything, the federal government is going to do in terms of helping us get through our immediate crisis in spending. So in short, I think we have some opportunities to grow here. I think we have some opportunities to see just what exactly we can do. I'm certainly not prepared to say exactly what can be done until we know what the data is and until we know what other sources are available that I haven't even heard of yet. And perhaps Jenny hasn't heard of you either, right?
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Tom, this next question, I'm going to have you start with it. It's please explain why you do or do not support statewide, quote, just cause, unquote, legislation or other approaches to address the needs of tenants and landlords.
Thank you for asking me that question, Bev, because as a housing attorney for the last 30 years, I definitely have some opinions on that one. We're talking about just cause evictions. We're also talking about a whole host of other things that the legislature has done. And for the last 30 years, I've been on the receiving end of the legislation. I know that what the legislature has done has been well-meaning. They've tried to make it, much of the recent changes have been to combat homelessness, but I think there's an awful lot of unintended consequences. I've looked at the just cause eviction statutes. I think they're extremely draconian against landlords. When we're dealing with housing, we have approximately a 1% vacancy rate, at least in Spokane, in residential rental properties. We need to provide more housing. We need to build more houses is what we need to do, making it exponentially more difficult for landlords to manage their properties, I think runs the very real risk that just the opposite is going to happen. Most of the landlords I've represented throughout the years, they don't have a lot of margin to their operations. And so when you increase the costs of doing business, you decrease their margins even more. And I think that you're going to see a lot of unintended consequences of more rental properties coming off the market, being taken off the market because there's just no financial incentive to provide housing.
Thank you very much. Jenny, what are your thoughts on just cause legislation and other approaches to address the needs of tenants and landlords?
Thanks, Bev, for asking that. So I am actually a sitting member of the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee, which means that all of that legislation comes through my committee. So I am very well versed in the legislation that has been coming through the committee the last 2 sessions And it's been really heartbreaking to watch that as a former landlord and also a tenant. I've had the opportunity to be both. And, you know, to work with my colleagues to come up with fair options that would help to ease some of the burden on landlords, but also, you know, be able to help keep tenants in their homes as well. And from the experience that I have seen firsthand, um, the bottom line is that with a one-party state, what I've experienced is there being not a need for the one party to come to the table and actually sit down and hammer out some solutions that will also be fair towards landlords. This has just been pushed through under the majority party, and it's costing us dearly because we're going to run out of rental homes and we need more affordable housing.
Thank you very much. Our next question, I'm going to start with you, Jenny. How would you address the rising homelessness problem in the Spokane area and many other parts of our state?
Okay, so the rising homeless problem, it does not have one face. It doesn't have one cause, and it doesn't have one solution. This is very personal to me because both my sister and brother were homeless teens. They both died homeless teens because there weren't the opportunities for them. So this is something that, you know, that I take very seriously. It's also been very heartbreaking in my life to have friends that have had loved ones that have become addicted, and they've worked with them. They have sacrificed everything for their loved ones, trying to help them recover. Some were lucky and they did the hard work and they've stayed sober. Other ones were not able as much for whatever reason. And they, you know, they didn't make it. And I've seen the heartbreak that causes. And because of that, as a legislator, I came back to Spokane and I've worked with not only law enforcement, but I've been on the ride-alongs with the fire department, and I've had the opportunity to see in motion police officers and counselors come together to help those in need. And, you know, I've also worked very hard for funding, which has been paramount to places like Excelsior or other institutions, law enforcement that need that help so desperately.
Thank you very much. Tom, how would you address homelessness in Spokane and in other parts of the state?
Right, and again, as a housing attorney, this is something that I've dealt with most of my career, certainly in the last few years. You know, homelessness has just become such a political lightning rod, and that's so unfortunate because for every homeless person, there's a unique story. There's no one to categorize all homeless people as criminals or to punish all homeless people is just simply wrong. There is no simple answer to this. I think, first of all, we need to have the data. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of attorneys, housing attorneys, Northwest Justice Project attorneys, and frankly, we don't know how many homeless people there are. What are their needs? What's going on? One thing we do know is that there's a disproportionate number of homeless veterans. And how can that be? These are people who have served their country and they've come back to this country and they're not receiving the services they need to deal with PTSD and other related disorders that are a direct result of their time in the service. We can't lump everybody together. There are people who are homeless who are criminals, and in those situations, when laws are broken, they need to be enforced. I'm inspired by a lot of what has been going on recently. There's a lot of new outreach programs involving multi-agency coordinated responses with law enforcement, healthcare professionals, job trainers, and the like. You know, I have a compassionate heart and an open ear for the homeless, because how many of us are living are just one paycheck away from walking in their shoes. I would support a housing trust fund, and I especially support increased building more affordable housing.
Okay, thank you very much. Tom, the next question is has to do with public schools. In recent years, the legislature has provided a significant amount of additional state funding to public schools statewide in response to the McGary decision. Do you support or oppose additional state funding for public schools to address local budget shortfalls?
Yes,
Okay.
that's for me. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's been almost a decade since the court orders have been entered and handed down requiring the state to fulfill its constitutional duties. I believe there's no better investment in our society than the education of our children, young adults, and adults who want to return to school seeking upward mobility. I mean, that's pretty much defined our great nation, the ability for upward mobility. In our public schools, vulnerable children are fed, they're counseled, they have access to a whole host of support systems, including the systems and the support of their peers. I'm committed to prioritizing public education because in many ways, our public education system is core to our economy. I realize that this last semester has been like no other. I'm pleased to know that Spokane Public Schools has largely been able to implement a robust technological response to COVID-19, but that's not been the case with all school districts. I think that it's wrong that these school districts are struggling. I think it's absolutely critical that, and just wrong that rural and semi-rural communities in 2020 still don't have access to affordable broadband internet services. So yes, I'm committed to education. I can't think of any better way to prepare our society going forward for future generations than to have an educated populace who can compete on a world market.
Okay, thank you very much. Jenny, do you support or oppose additional state funding for public schools to address local budget shortfalls?
Thank you, Bev.
Mm-hmm.
That question, I'm going to lead off with, there is nothing more important than education for our children. I was fortunate to go to Washington State schools and raise my children in District 81, going to Washington State public schools. I'm very proud of the opportunities that they've had, and I enjoy again, I am an assistant ranking member for college and workforce development. So I've had opportunities to fight for some of that extra funding to help our kids be successful. I think that, with the hopes and dreams that we have, there also is a dose of reality that we have got to pay attention to, that 52% of our entire state budget, 52% of the entire state budget goes to K through 12 education. That is a mandate by McGary. That is protected money. So we're not going to go backwards in that. It will continue to be I would say, one of the most important things that we have, if not the most important. We also have other mandates, though, from the legislature that we also have to be able to look at. So we are going to have to prioritize education and then go down from there on what's important.
Okay, thank you very much. Jenny, I'm going to start with you on this next question. What actions would you take to address the safety and traffic issues on Highway 195, including its connection to eastbound I-90?
Okay, so that stretch of road is one that I'm familiar with because I've had the wonderful experience of being able to drive to Columbia Basin College. My daughter was going through dental hygiene school and I was one of her patients a lot. So I'm familiar with that roadway. It does definitely need work. It's very dangerous in some situations. And though I'm not on the transportation committee, I've definitely looked into this. There are options that we have. Some of those options are going to include lighting, which isn't there right now. There could be some roundabouts, which are meant to keep traffic moving, but also manage it so that we're less likely to have accidents, and also making it to where there's no left turns. Those are all options that we have at this point that I do think will make a difference in saving lives and saving the state money as well.
Thank you very much. Tom, what actions would you take to address that safety and traffic issues on Highway 195 connecting to eastbound I-90?
Well, yes, that is a big issue in our district. The traffic delays are unbelievable in places, and they're not just an inconvenience. They're dangerous situations that need to be addressed. In light of diminished revenues and in light of the people's vote regarding repealing license tabs, it's going to be difficult to fund this and other projects. But we have to find the money for that someplace. It's fundamental to our economics. I mean, certainly we've seen what improvements in other areas of our district have done in terms of developing our economy. I mean, oddly enough, the 195 traffic safety issues impacts something seemingly unrelated as homelessness. Recently, developers are trying to build homes in the Eagle Ridge subdivision, but they're thwarted from doing so because there isn't sufficient ingress and egress. We need to cobble together the money someplace to address these issues. We need a champion in in Olympia that looks out for the people in Eastern Washington, and we need to make sure that the people in the 6th legislative district receive our fair share of funds for highway construction and for highway safety.
Thank you very much. We are going to move on to closing statements. So you each have 1 minute for a closing statement. So this is your chance to say whatever you want to say, and maybe there are some questions that we didn't ask, and issues that you want to talk about. So this is your 1 minute, and since Tom, you opened in the beginning, I'm going to have Jenny start first with her 1 minute closing. Jenny?
Thank you. The first thing that I would like to say is that funding for our roads is something that, I grew up in Western Washington, and I know what they get versus what we get over here. So I've been proud to partner with all of the legislators in our Eastern Washington communities and fight for that money for our roads that we will continue fighting for. I want to thank you again for inviting me to participate in the League of Women's Voters Forum. It's refreshing to see organizations like this that host events that are successful and fun. I'm extremely thankful to have the opportunity such as this. My path into politics began with me becoming a voice for human beings erased by murder. That evolved into the realization that crime victims and their families and the public need a strong, oh, I'm sorry, I thought we had longer.
Jenny, go ahead and finish your sentence. It's okay. I'll give you another few seconds.
Okay. So I just, I am so grateful for the opportunity to stand up, to be that voice that sometimes is really hard to be. And, I'm a very strong, assertive woman when I need to be. And I have been proud to make a difference for our 6th district.
Thank you so much. Now, Tom, it's your turn, and I'm going to give you more than a minute. So uh, a few more seconds, and you can say what you wanted to say, and maybe we didn't ask. So it's all
Sure.
yours.
Sure. Thank you very much. And I do want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. And I agree with Jenny. It's fun. I've enjoyed this a lot. I'm still Tom McGary, and I'm still campaigning to earn your vote. And I think more importantly, I'm campaigning to earn your confidence. I do want to thank my fellow candidates who've joined me in this campaign. I mean, this is what America's all about. It's people discussing their vision for the future. And I think it was Yogi Berra who said something to the effect that the future isn't what it used to be. And that certainly is absolutely true, especially now. But I believe that the future is bright. I think that we can find some opportunities here. We've all made sacrifices, and we need to continue down the path of respecting each other and our families as we address the pandemic. There have been so many teachable moments already this year. Let's embrace the change that's upon us. Let's be grown up about it. Let's work at it. But just like the greatest generation among those who were my parents, we're fighting together on home front towards better days. As the next biennial budget is crafted, there's going to be cuts to spending, no question about it. I'm dedicated to protecting education and healthcare systems and our economy. I say that serious times require serious people. I continue to make the case that you can count on me to make sure that Eastern Washington is a priority. I think that all decisions have to be data driven. We need to stop promoting fallacious and misleading information about healthcare, about things like untested vaccines. And I mean, for crying out loud, wear a face mask. It's not that big of a deal, okay? I mean, people aren't dying right and left because of face masks. So that's what I have to say. And if you'd like any more information about me, please go to my website. It's www.time4tom.com. So it's timefortom.com. And again, thank you to all of you.
You're welcome. Jenny, do you have a website that you want to bring to people's attention?
Yes, the website is Vote Jenny Graham.
Okay, very good. All right, so I want to thank both of you for participating in such a full way, and you're both very, very prepared, and that's so important to the voters. So again, I'm going to say thank you to Jenny Graham, Republican, Tom McGary, Democrat, and also Christian McLaughlin, a Democrat who was unable to participate. This concludes our 2020 primary election candidate forum, featuring candidates for State Legislative District 6, State Representative Position 2. And the League will host a general election forum in late September for the top 2 finishers in this race. And once again, here is a reminder about voting in the primary. Ballots must be mailed or deposited in ballot boxes in convenient community locations by August 4th, 2020, or can be dropped off at one of the voter service centers on August 4th. The top 2 vote getters in this race will advance to the general election. In order to vote, you must be registered to vote, and you can register by mail or online by July 27th, 2020. Or you can register in person by August 4th at the elections office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue, or at the Center Place in Spokane Valley. For more information on voting procedures, go to www.spokanecounty.org/elections. If you have questions or special concerns regarding casting your ballot, you may contact the Spokane County Elections Office, 509-477-2320. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you to all of the candidates for their participation in this forum. We hope this has given you, the voters, information about the candidates that will help you make an informed decision when marking your ballots by Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. Additional voter service information is available through the League of Women Voters at www.lwvspokane.org. You can also learn more about the candidates at the League of Women Voters online voter guide, Vote 411. That is www.411.org. Again, thank you very much for joining us.